The Seattle Kraken sign another centerman, plus the AHL Calder Cup final is all knotted up one game apiece as the series heads west. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. My name is Erica L. Ayala, and not only am I your host of Locked On Kraken, but I'm also a contributor over at CBS Sports in women's basketball and ice hockey. I have also contributed to the New York Times, the Washington Post, and Forbes, as well as and the reason that I got this job as host is because I was one of the writers behind the scenes as NHL Seattle unveiled its official name, logo, all of the things. Of course, the Seattle Kraken. So I got to work with some of the writing staff early on in the process. I've got a lot to talk about today, including maybe like a little bit of a confession regarding game one, and we will get into all of that. But before we do that, I want to let you know today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You can make every moment more when you visit FanDuel, because right now new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnKraken to get started. And where we're going to start is by talking about a roster update. That's right. The Seattle Kraken made a signing. Now, not a big signing, but still a signing nonetheless. We have officially inked Oscar Fisker Molgaard, who was selected 52nd overall in the 2023 NHL draft. Of course, we've got the 24 NHL draft coming up. The Kraken's first Danish pick. Now, this is what Ron Francis, our general manager, had to say about Oscar. That's how my people would say. Oscar, we are excited for Oscar. And we are excited for Oscar to officially join our organization. He has already demonstrated the ability to play at a high level in the Swedish Hockey League at the World Championships, and we look forward to his continued development. Now, he's played with HV71 of the Swedish Hockey League, the SHL, and he set a new career high in points, 9 goals, 12 assists. His goals and assists rank him 6th overall, while his points were tied for 6th amongst skaters on his team. He finished ranked 3rd in points and 2nd in assists among all U20 SHL skaters. He played 7 postseason regulation games, recorded 3 assists, and helped the team avoid relegation. He's 168 pounds, 6 foot tall center, 28 points, 13 goals, 15 assists in 91 career regular season games in the SHL. He's been with HV71 with the U18 team, the U20 team. He's recorded 59 points in 62 games from 2021-22 to 22-23. Played 15 playoff games, recorded 9 points, and that breakdown is 4 goals, 5 assists. I mentioned that he's from Denmark. He's represented Denmark at the U18 D1 level, both in 21-22 and 22-23. He played at the U20 level, D1A, in 21-22 and 23-24. He played in the World Junior Championships for Denmark and the IIHF World Championships in 22-23 and 23-24, as well as the Deutschland Cup in 23-24. He's been alternate captain for his national team. He won bronze with the U20 D1A World Junior team. And this is what I like, especially he's coming in as a center. His faceoff percentage was the best mark among all U20 D1A skaters. He was named the best forward and top player of the 22-23 U18 World Junior Championships, recorded the best plus minus at a +9. Most assists with 6, most goals with 6, and the most points in the tournament, 12 overall. This is a pretty solid pick, obviously, for the Seattle Kraken. But what's going to happen now that Molgaard has been signed? I'm going to take from the hockey news here. This is Derek O'Brien reporting. And again, I mentioned the quick facts here. It's going to be an entry-level signing. And this is again what Derek has to say, quote, as with many entry-level deals for young Europeans who are probably not quite ready to step into the NHL, signing a contract does not mean he'll be going to North America immediately. So he could play, of course, for the Coachella Valley Firebirds, though this writer believes that he's developing at a good pace in Sweden, in the Swedish league, and that might be where he is in 24-25. Now, again, his stats in the SHL might not pop league-wide. He definitely, of course, was top 10 on his team. But I like, again, what he was able to do at the international stage within his age group. And so, I think it's good to see that he can play with his age group. He's getting experience playing with older players. And this is what Molgaard said during the World Championships in Prague. It started off pretty slow, and we got a new coach after 12 games, but the new coach gave me the opportunity to play on the second line and on the power play and PK as well. So he's getting that experience, had a different coach that had a different vision, so that's benefited him. After 12 games, he also mentioned, so that's where some of that, perhaps where we see, I have to look at the split and how much he was contributing before the change and after the change. I was playing a lot, and you get some pretty valuable experience playing in those situations. It turned out to be a pretty good year, and hopefully I can keep it going next year. So now he does talk about having a good relationship with Danish hockey legend Frans Nielsen, who works for the Kraken as a scout and development coach. I talk to him once or twice a week, and he sends me clips. I really appreciate that. The way he played, the way he battled, he was so smart with the puck. He was my idol growing up, so I tried to do the same things he did, and I just listened to everything he's got to say. He goes on to say that, he's got other great mentors, including a veteran on the national team, Patrick Russell. But, and that's another opportunity as well for him to stay in Europe, gives him more time with some of those European players. But I like this as well, and I think it fits into the Kraken mold that we try to have here. What he's been hearing from his mentors is, quote, they've told me that the mental thing is the hardest part. You can always get better at hockey stuff, but you've got to be strong in your head. And that's what I'm trying to work on the most, to keep going when things aren't going my way and to work hard every day. I like that. And Russell, who I mentioned, is one of the veterans he's around. He always wants to hear what the older players have to say. He's a smart kid, and he'll have a great career. So, I think that's good. It is a centerman, so I think it's interesting, given what we're going to talk about, especially in the next segment. We've been talking about Matty Beniers, and we know that his contract extension is being negotiated as we speak. We also are going to talk about Shane Wright, back from injury, but maybe not all the way back. And we'll get into that coming up on this episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken is brought to you by our friends at Policygenius. Now, we know a lot of times life is unpredictable, but a good life insurance plan gives your family a financial safety net to protect against some of the unknowns. Now, with Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid unnecessary medical exams. And the great thing about Policygenius is that it helps you easily compare your options from the best and top insurers throughout the country. And you can do it in just a few clicks. They have award-winning agents that can even walk you through the process step by step if that's what you need. Policygenius, they don't have an incentive to sell you a particular policy from one insurer over the other. So you can really be rest assured that you're going to get the best options for what your criteria are and not someone trying to sell you on something specific. They have thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers, who found the best fit for their needs. So get peace of mind in finding the right life insurance with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com, or you can click the link that you'll find in the show notes to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you can save. Again, that's policygenius.com. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. And of course, we want to remind you that as part of the Locked On family, you can check out Locked On Sports Today, which is a 24/7, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories from our very own experts. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news. And it's streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. And it's, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we bring you your favorite team every single day. Now, on Friday, you heard JD and I talk about the upcoming series between the Coachella Valley Firebirds and, of course, I almost said the Admirals, because we're going to hear about that Milwaukee series in just a minute. But we're taking on the Hershey Bears once again in our quest for the cup, the unfinished business. Of course, JD and I talked about what this would mean to Dan Bilesma, who's going to take over the reins as the Seattle Kraken head coach. What does this mean now that Jay Leach is out of the picture as far as on one of the bench bosses for the Kraken? So many different storylines, including, of course, Chris Drieger. And what the future holds for him, we're not exactly sure, but it's looking like the writing's on the wall. But I did a watch along. Thank you for those who joined the watch along. We had a really good time, and I had a really special guest, and that's one Ann Kimmel, one of your co-hosts of Locked On Nashville Predators. And I asked JD about the silver spoon, and of course I was going to ask Ann about the silver spoon, and one of our Locked On loyal listeners also in the chat asked Ann. So let's go to what Ann Kimmel had to say about the silver spoon controversy. And make sure you stick around to the end of the episode, because Ann might be able to get the Admiral's perspective on this very issue. So before I recap Game 1 and Game 2, here's a little bit of what you missed from our live watch along featuring Ann Kimmel. What are your thoughts on the silver spoon controversy?
Okay, now I'll be honest with you. I want to put this out there because I feel like it's so important. The player who said this is Spencer Stasny, is the player who said this. Now, on Locked On Predators, my co-host Emma and I we went through and did player superlatives. Spencer Stasny, young defenseman, played some time in the NHL. His superlative was most likely to do Emma's taxes, because that gives you context over the fact that there is literally nothing about Spencer Stasny that is interested in stirring drama. He is the least likely professional athlete in perhaps all of sports history to try to stir a pot. No pun intended. No pun intended.
That was the amazing Ann Kimmel, of course, joined me on Locked On Kraken yesterday on Sunday as we had a fun watch along and also talked, of course, about some mutuals that she has playing that have come through the Predators that are playing for Edmonton of all teams in the Stanley Cup final. Edmonton finally able to get a win in the Stanley Cup final. So was Dallas, by the way, excuse me, in the NBA finals. So we'll see the series continue. No sweeps. But the thing that I want you to know is that this week, make sure you check out Locked On Preds, and I will make sure to recap it with you here on Locked On Kraken. But Anne and Emma are going to interview the social media manager for the Milwaukee Admirals. And so I have it on good information. I asked Anne not once, but twice if she was going to be able to talk to the social media manager about why they have blocked Fuego. It had something to do with this picture on the screen right here. Fuego pointing into the camera, holding a big silver spoon with a logo that has Admirals, the L in Admirals blued out, and a big L on the forehead. Some of you know that song. Anyway, I think that's going to be amazing. So we might have Anne back for that. But let's get into these games. Again, here's the schedule for the Calder Cup finals. We had a game on Friday. I'm going to recap that briefly. We had a game on Sunday. I'm going to spend more time talking about the Sunday game, and then we'll get you ready for the next game, which is going to be in Coachella Valley. It's going to be on Tuesday. We have a game Tuesday and Thursday, and we will recap those as well. So the Firebirds get game number 1, 4-3 win. Overall, pretty solid. The Firebirds, though, were 0 for 4 on the power play. They had, again, 4 opportunities on the advantage, could not capitalize. The Hershey Bears were 1 of 5. So between the two teams, 9 penalties and 9 power play opportunities. Now, we might not have scored on the power play, but John Hayden got the first goal of the game, and it was shorthanded. And early on, we'll get to game 2, but just a little teaser, spoiler alert. Early on, the Firebirds seem to be cooking up more of the same. That being said, Joe Snively for the Hershey Bears scored the first goal of the game, 1:15, a minute and 15 minutes into the game. At the 6:34 mark, though, that's when Hayden got his shorty, and Ryan Winterton went back-to-back. He got a goal in the first frame at 13:52, and then the first goal of the second stanza at 9:49, making that his second and third goals. John Hayden would get another goal in the second frame that would ultimately be the game-winning goal, because Hendrix Lapierre did score that power play goal, the aforementioned power play goal. That was in the third, late in the third, mind you. But overall, Chris Drieger and the Coachella Valley Firebirds able to hold on. Speaking of Driegs, he made 16 saves on 19 shot attempts. Hunter Shepard, 19 saves on 23 shot attempts. The Coachella Valley Firebirds take game 1. Hayden was your first star, followed by Ryan Winterton and Hendrix Lapierre. So very cool there. Mentioned that Hayden had 2 goals. Winterton also had 2 goals. So you like to see that. Cam Hughes had 2 points. He assisted on both Winterton goals. And so let's go to game 2. Now, game 2, more of the same. The Hershey Bears score not just first, but they score the only goal in the first. So they score the first goal in the first period. Luke Henman, first goal of the playoffs. And it was a snipe, assisted by Ryan Winterton. And it's looking like we have a game. And then some uncharacteristic mistakes from the Firebirds. One was Drieger playing the puck behind the net. Another one later in the game was Just a really good breakaway. Nobody on defense stepping up. I said it on the stream. The good news is that these are fixable mistakes. The frustrating part of that news is that they are also preventable, so you shouldn't have to fix them. Just some lapses here for the Firebirds. I mentioned Hedman got the goal. Marian Studenish got a goal as well in this game. But the Firebirds lose this one. 5-2 was your ultimate score. Once again, empty, fruitless on the power play are the Firebirds. Hershey 0 for 3 as well. And it just seemed like, again, you want to see a little bit more 5-on-5 play. When we were 5-on-5, I think we were the better team, but just some undisciplined play. We talked about how, although this team, or I should say, we talked about with JD how this is a more disciplined version of the Firebirds. This game shows that there's still a little bit more work to do. All of the stars in the game coming from the Bears side of things. Hunter Shepard, their goalie, he had 32 saves out of 34 shot attempts. Jimmy Huntington had a goal and an assist, and 2 assists for Mike Vecchione. So a good game for Hershey, not the best game for the Firebirds, but that's okay because we get back after it tomorrow. And on tomorrow's episode, we'll break this down a little bit more. But once again, want to give you the schedule. So the Firebirds will host on Tuesday, tomorrow, June 18th, on Thursday, June 20th, and Game 5, if necessary, on Saturday, June 22nd. Coming up next on Locked On Kraken, I mentioned that the Seattle Kraken, they signed one of our young prospects, Oscar Molgaard. And now I want to go back to the mock draft. I want to go back to the Locked On NHL mock draft and also introduce someone who was picked before us in the Locked On NHL mock draft, but that some other mock drafts say a defenseman also that could possibly fall to 8. And the 8th pick, of course, belongs to the Seattle Kraken. We'll talk about that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken, as I mentioned at the top of the show, brought to you by our good friends at FanDuel. Now, summertime means baseball's in full swing. I mentioned that the NHL Finals and the NBA Finals have extended at least one more game, so you can bet on it all at FanDuel. Now, I personally check out FanDuel for their WNBA odds. If you had Caitlin Clark going to the Olympics, you would have lost that bet. Unless, of course, you listen to some of my WNBA coverage. But anyway, I digress. Check it out on CBS. But right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Again, that's $200 in bonus bets. And all you have to do is make at least a $5 bet and win. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and win big. And add winning big to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Yeah, it's another Olympic year, and we'll get to this soon enough, but I will be in Paris for the Summer Olympics. Now, if you've been a long-time listener, then you know I got to cover Maddie Beniers, Sarah Nurse, and of course, the men's and women's hockey tournament, very specifically at the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics. This will be my first time covering a Summer Olympics, and I will be in the homeland of one of our centermen, maybe former centerman, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare. So I will do the power stance. Hello, my name is Pierre-Edouard Bellemare. I will be doing the power stance in his honor. Before we get out of here on today's show, a reminder that Locked On NHL once again has done a mock draft. Zev Buyam is who I selected at number 8 for the Seattle Kraken. And, I really like what I'm hearing from Zev. There was a great write-up on I believe it was NHL.com talking about Zev, and he seems like a really solid human. And what I liked about the story, Mike Morial, who actually wrote a feature on me, actually, which is kind of wild. So always have a lot of love for Mike Morial. When I called that New Jersey Devils game, he was one of the people that interviewed me and Kelly Schultz. But anyway, Zev Bouillon ranked number 4 against North American skaters, led NCAA at position with 50 points for Denver. He's a defenseman. And I like how this story opens. And I think it really gives you an idea of where the drive, the passion, drive, and patience. We didn't have eBay Motors today, but anyway, where his passion comes from. Zev Bouillon pushed his parents to make him a hockey player. It wasn't the other way around, and maybe that helps explain where he is today. A World Junior champion, a World Juniors champion, an NCAA champion, and a top prospect in the upcoming NHL draft. I would say it's the best way, honestly, William said. I love that. I love that. It's a great opening. Now, his parents originally are from Israel, and they had to adjust to a life in North America, in the United States, very specifically in California, SoCal. And, you know, the family story gets a little bit more familiar from there. You've got siblings, you kind of play the same sport growing up, but Zev Bouillon really took to hockey. And you know, he said that he didn't like it at first. He played roller hockey for the first 2 months and then went back to the ice and kind of fell in love with the ice portion of the hockey world, which sometimes is the other way, especially for those SoCal children. But he says his parents never had to force him to go to practice. It was innate. He has this self-drive, and I really love that. So, I mean, this is who I picked, and we'll get into more profiles, especially as we continue with the Locked On NHL mock draft. We have Locked On NHL Prospects has ranked I believe they've gotten through the first 16 picks of round 1. So that episode should be up today. You can check it out. But don't worry, I will go over, just like I did last year, how Locked On Prospects thinks we here at Locked On Kraken did. I did not do great last year. Hopefully I did a little bit better. But there is another pick that I considered as we were getting ready for our Locked On NHL mock draft. And again, I just want to show you, this is on the screen. So Celebrini going first. But the first defender, I guess technically the second defender on the list at number 6 to Utah, Zane Parekh, is someone that I considered picking. Now, of course, they go at number 6 in our mock draft, which means that he was not available when I was picking. But, you know, another name that I think it's worth knowing and considering when it comes to what the Seattle Kraken will potentially do. And here's what a lot of folks are saying about Zane. So our good friend Glenn Dreyfus over at the Hockey News had a few things to say about Zane. Says, of course, we are 2 weeks away from the draft that will be at the Sphere in Las Vegas. And if there's no trades, of course, we will have the number 8 pick. And Ryan Kennedy from the Hockey News consulted with 20 NHL scouts to compile a top 100 ranking. The player ranked 8th overall and thus available to Seattle is Zane Parekh, a right-handed defenseman with the OHL Spirit, with the OHL team, the Spirit. So Parekh just helped the Spirit win a Memorial Cup championship. And, it was a little bit bittersweet for those listening to the program because, of course, he overcame the Moose Jaw Warriors, which we have a prospect, of course, Jaeger Furkes, who plays for Moose Jaw. But here are some of the things that scouts have been saying about Parik. He's never going to be a shutdown guy, but there's a place for him because of everything else. When he gets the puck in the zone, it's getting out one way or another. I hear determination in that personally. He's near an elite offensive defenseman. So, I think that it's saying that he's close, but maybe not quite there, which is fine. 33 goals and 96 points during the regular season for the Spirit. As draft preview points out, the total was tops among OHL defensemen, only surpassed by 5 forwards. So, offensively speaking, that's pretty solid. Now, I, for one, of course, looked at those offensive numbers, and if the Seattle Kraken are going to continue to struggle with offense, that would be massive if he can keep that performance going, right? But there are a few things to consider here. One is, and I sure hope this is the case, the Seattle Kraken need to fix their offensive problems on the offensive side of the ice. They need to fix that with their forwards. I will say that till I'm blue in the face, deep blue, of course. But we might not necessarily, it's not that it hurts to have an offensive defenseman. It never hurts to have an offensive defenseman, but I want to be thoughtful of needs that are maybe more evergreen and not just be enamored by an offensive defenseman, because sometimes, generally speaking, the problem that I have with offensive defensemen is that they are more offensive than they are defensive. And to me, that you might as well just be a forward at that point. And the Seattle Kraken, whether you want to believe me or not, the eye test on this one, because advanced analytics are predictive at best when it comes to defense, we need our forwards to be better and more defensively sound. And so I don't think, and personally, that the solution is to then get D to be more offensive. I want them to move the puck, but I don't need them scoring 33 goals. Hopefully the forwards can do some of that. But here's some other things. Creates off the rush, distributes on the power play, and gets pucks to the net. Great hands. Offensive instincts are highly developed. But here it goes. The defense is concerning. But if you're drafting Parik, you know what he brings to the table. So if he is immediately coming to the Seattle Kraken, sure. But the chances are that he's not, in my estimation. And I think that's okay. But I want a defender that can defend. That's what I always want. And so for my money, Bouillon is more well-rounded. He seems to have a little bit more upside. This is now, in fairness, this is from what other people are saying. All I have is video on both of these guys. I don't know what they're like in the locker room. I haven't spoken to them personally. I think Ziev seems very more self-aware, maybe. There's a confidence that's a little bit different from what I've seen from Parik just in the interviews that have been shown from the combine. So for me, even though I definitely took a look at Parik, for me, it's still Bouillon. So let me know in the comments, especially if you're on YouTube, what do you think? Parik goes ahead of Bouillon in our mock draft. That could switch. What if Bouillon ends up going to Utah? And is Parik someone that you want? Do you want to maybe go with a forward? I still think I like the idea of us developing a younger defenseman. So, but let me know in the comments. On tomorrow's episode, I hinted at some things going wrong, perhaps with Shane Wright. I want to spend a little bit more time on tomorrow's episode talking about that, because we will be previewing game number 3 in the AHL Calder Cup final. And of course, I will also let you know what the Locked On NHL Prospects team thought about our pick. And I might even toss in what they say about Parekh as well, because again, a lot of mock drafts have one of those two coming to the Kraken. But as always, be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. I said it on yesterday's live stream, but a happy belated Father's Day to anyone where it applies. And of course, I want to send a heartfelt just hug to anyone that finds Father's Day a little bit difficult for one reason or another. But you know how we do. We hold fast, we stay true, and we're going to get fired up because we're going to root for the Firebirds. And of course, we say loud and proud, let's go Kraken. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.